Shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. As a mother, I was devastated to see the fathers of Bianca Jones and Holly Morton-Bowles front the media today following revelations that those responsible for the deaths of their girls have received fines of just $185. The families had to learn this from a British victim's family. Government officials have apologised today. What action will the Prime Minister now take to seek justice for these beautiful girls?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for her question, and indeed all our hearts go out to the loved ones and friends of Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones. Like so many young Australians do, they set off overseas together for fun and adventure to expand their horizons in the world. And what occurred is an absolute tragedy. They should be with us today, looking back on a trip full of happy memories made together. Instead, their loved ones are still mourning a devastating loss, and the events of the past 24 hours have added to the heartbreak of their families. The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has apologised unreservedly for their failure to ensure that the families were informed, and that is an entirely appropriate thing for them to do. The Foreign Minister has made it clear to her counterpart in Laos that Australia expects full accountability, and the charges should reflect the devastating seriousness of this incident. The fact that 6 lives were lost, including Holly and Bianca's. We'll continue to engage Lao authorities on these cases, and we will do everything we can to support Holly and Bianca's families at this distressing time.
Give the call to the honourable member for Gellibrand.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. What action is the Albanese government taking to protect Australian children from harm on the gaming platform Roblox?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Gellibrand for his question and for all the thought and work that he gives to this really important area of public policy in this place. Mr Speaker, the Albanese government proved through our world-leading social media law that we will not stand idly by when it comes to protecting children online. And that is why I have put Roblox on notice. I am disgusted, and we should all be disgusted, by the reports that there are predators using Roblox to target and groom children, with reports that children as young as 4 are being exposed to graphic and gratuitous content on this platform. That is unacceptable, and I will be using every lever at my disposal to fix this. Firstly, I have written to Roblox demanding an urgent meeting because I want to hear directly from them about what they are doing to protect our children online. Australian children should be able to enjoy an online game without fear of being exploited, manipulated and abused, and Australian parents should be able to let their children play games online without fear that they will be exploited, manipulated or abused. What we are seeing right now is simply not good enough. Secondly, I have written to the eSafety Commissioner seeking urgent advice about what action can be taken to prevent harm to young people on this gaming platform, both in the short and the long term. And third, I have requested the Classification Board to review its rating of Roblox at PG. This was last done in 2018, and obviously things have changed a lot online in the last 8 years. Roblox must do better, and we must expect them to do better. The eSafety Commissioner will continue to hold Roblox accountable, and I know they are looking into them right now. Going forward, the Albanese government is committed to legislating a digital duty of care. A digital duty of care will take some of the burden off Australians and put the responsibility on platforms like Roblox to have systems in place to prevent harms from happening in the first place. Harms too many Australians, too many young Australians are familiar with, like predatory behaviour on Roblox, like non-consensual, nudified images being created on Grok, and like algorithms that lead people down rabbit holes and feed them harmful content. Harms that for the last decade we have just accepted as an unavoidable dark side of the internet. That was until Australians united and sent a clear, unprecedented message to big tech by legislating a minimum age for social media. The Albanese government is on the side of parents, not of platforms, and the safety of young Australians online will always come first.
Give the call to the honourable member for Ryan.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. In response to President Herzog's visit, who was found by a UN commission to have incited genocide, peaceful protesters were last night subjected to horrific brutality by the New South Wales Police. Your invitation has...
Order. The member will resume her seat. The member for Riverina. We dealt with this issue yesterday. We're going to allow members to ask their question in silence out of respect for the member. Order. We're just doing a reset. Out of respect for the member for Ryan, she'll begin her question again and she'll be heard in silence. You may not like the content of the question, you may like the content of the answer, but everyone deserves to be shown respect while they're asking their question. She has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. Question to the Prime Minister. In response to President Herzog's visit, who was found by a UN commission to have incited genocide, peaceful protesters were last night subjected to horrific brutality by the New South Wales Police. Your invitation has fundamentally undermined unity and social cohesion in this country. Will you condemn this police violence and, at the very least, send President Herzog home?
Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker.
Order. The Prime Minister will just pause. Order. We will deal. Yes, we'll deal this in a respectful way. That's how points of order will be taken. And I'm giving the call to the member for Curtin on a point of order.
I'm seeking a ruling on whether the member for Colin Boyce Flynn is breaching Standing Order 90 by saying "rip her apart."
Order. Order. Members on my right are going to cease interjecting immediately. I'm unaware of what was said, but I remind all members to treat each other with respect. If the member for Flynn indicates that he wishes to make a withdrawal, I'll allow him to do so.
I withdraw, Mr Speaker.
I thank the member for Flynn. Order. Prime Minister will now be heard in silence.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. President Herzog is visiting Australia at the invitation of the Governor-General as her equivalent head of state. The Australian government supports the invitation, and I'll be meeting with him later today and with victims of with families of the 15 innocent victims whose lives were tragically cut short on the 14th of December. That is what this visit is about. And I would say to everyone in this chamber and outside, as I have said repeatedly, we need to turn the temperature down in this country. We need to turn it right down, including in the rhetoric that just took place in that exchange in this chamber. President Herzog is here in Australia to offer sympathy and solidarity to people who are mourning and to offer his support to members of Australia's Jewish community. He has said, to quote him, that his visit is in the spirit of solidarity, friendship and love. Not enough of that anywhere in the world, not the least here in the past couple of months. I know people have different views and very strong views about the Middle East, and they're entitled to express those, and they're entitled to do that in a peaceful way. The Australian government does that as well. We have recognised Palestine, we support two states, we have spoken out about the devastation and humanitarian crisis in Gaza, in addition to our unequivocal condemnation of Hamas's atrocities on October 7. We will continue to understand that there is a need in this country as well as globally for some nuance in this debate, and that the debate is not advanced by people thinking it's like a football team where you have to support 100% one side or the other. That does not advance peace. There are two roads in the Middle East. One is for Israelis and Palestinians to walk the path towards a settlement which does require, in the Australian government's view very strongly, a two-state solution. In order to do that, you need to engage constructively with Israelis and Palestinians. That is one path. The other path is that a powerful state, the State of Israel, is in a position which we have seen for 7 decades, and the Palestinians remain an oppressed people. Now, I believe very strongly that we need to engage with both Israelis and Palestinians as we go forward. I've consistently said that every life matters, whether Israeli or Palestinian. And the violence that we saw last night was devastating. And I know all Australians would have found those scenes very confronting. I note that the New South Wales Police have said they will examine the footage which was taken place last night, including, I note, that many people who saw the footage, particularly of the people who were praying, and then action was taken, will want to know all of the circumstances around that, and I'll allow the police to do their job. But I also note that there were systems put in place to make sure, which is pretty sensible, frankly, to separate where President Herzog was and where the demonstrations were, and that people sought to break that separation, and therefore to create a circumstance which was not going to be peaceful, that saw what occurred there. Now, in Australia, we can disagree peacefully and with respect. I will treat President Herzog with respect. I've known him for a long period of time. He is someone who you can have a respectful discussion with, whilst examining differences which is there. But he is here primarily to provide comfort for people who not only need it, but they deserve it at this time. And I will not, as a number of the crossbenchers have suggested, walk away from my support for his presence here, because it is appropriate that he be here at this time, and it's appropriate that people understand the context which is there, a community which is hurting, a community that is reaching out and just asking for some understanding. I've said before, and I'll say it again to conclude, we need to turn the temperature down, and the Greens political party need to be a part of turning that temperature down rather than up. Australians want the killing to stop. They want innocent lives to be protected, whether they be Israeli or Palestinian. And the other thing that they want is for conflict to not be brought here. That is overwhelmingly what they want. That's the government's position, and we'll continue to advocate for it.
Call to the honourable member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. Minister, how is the Albanese Labor government helping to end the violence against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and children?
Give the call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Lingiari, who for many decades has been standing up for the safety of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and children and communities right across Australia. I also want to thank the many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and communities who shared their advice, their stories and their insights in the drafting of this report, Our Ways. Strong Ways, Our Voices. I want to thank the members of the Steering Committee for their work. It's your courage and it's your commitment that drives this plan. Today's an historic day because for many decades Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women have been telling us they want safety for themselves and for their children. And today we have delivered on our election commitment to release a dedicated national plan for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to end violence against women and children. The statistics are grim. An Aboriginal woman is 7 times more likely to die in a domestic homicide than a non-Indigenous woman, 27 times more likely to be hospitalised due to intimate partner violence, 41 times more likely if they live in a remote or a regional community. That simply cannot continue. Importantly, this plan has been endorsed by every state and territory and it comes with significant extra funding. An additional $218 million so that we can change the story on the ground. We can send out mobile teams to help women leave unsafe situations. We can work with children who've been exposed to domestic violence to stop their trauma. We can work with men who are at risk of using violence to stop them using violence. This new investment comes on top of $262 million, which was committed in 2023, which is already making a difference. For example, in establishing men's centres that are working with men to prevent them using violence. Or the $367 million, which has more than doubled funding for family violence prevention legal services. The Leaving Violence program, which so far has helped 10,500 people leave domestic violence, or our investment in housing, more than $5 billion in emergency and transitional housing and for remote housing in the Northern Territory. Mr Speaker, I'm proud of the fact that the Albanese government is changing the story on family, domestic and sexual violence in this country. I know that all members would support this work because it's only by this investment led by and delivered by First Nations communities that we'll see real change.
Just do some acknowledgements before I call the Deputy Leader. I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today is a parliamentary delegation from the United Kingdom, led by Nick Smith MP, the Chair of the Administration Committee of the House of Commons. And I'm also pleased to advise that present in the gallery today is a delegation from the Springfield chapter of Movember Australia, a community support network dedicated to supporting men's mental and physical health. Over the past 14 years, the blokes sitting in the front row of the gallery have raised over $700,000 from a member. And best part, they all live in the Oxley electorate. Order. Give a call to the Honourable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer. High inflation hurts all Australians, whether you're paying a mortgage, renting, running a business or just trying to make ends meet. Treasurer, these are not my words. These are the words of the Governor of the Reserve Bank, who has also said that inflation will be, I quote, out of band and above target for 6 years. Treasurer, when will inflation come down?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A couple of things about that question. The last part of the question, if you look at the Reserve Bank's forecasts, they have inflation peaking around the middle of this year and then trailing away after that. We'll update our own Treasury forecasts in the usual way in the budget, and that will take into consideration recent developments. On the Governor's views about the impacts of inflation, I share them. And that's why when we came to office and inflation was higher than 6% and absolutely roaring on your watch, we took steps to make sure that we could get inflation lower than when we came to office, and now in recent times we've seen a tick-up, which means that inflation is higher than anyone would like. That's why we're rolling out cost of living help that those opposite oppose. That's why we're cutting taxes. Again, those opposite said that they would repeal those tax cuts. That's why we delivered surpluses, and we're demonstrating spending restraint and banking upward revisions to revenue in ways that would be unrecognisable to those opposite who didn't do any of those things, Mr Speaker. And so I'm happy to compare my record against our predecessors any day, whether it's on managing the budget in the most responsible way that we can, whether it's rolling out cost of living help. Now, if those opposite really cared about inflation and the cost of living, they wouldn't have run for the best part of a decade a policy of deliberate wage stagnation in our economy. If they cared about cost of living pressures in our economy, they wouldn't oppose the cost of living help. If they cared about cost of living pressures, they wouldn't have gone to the last election with a policy to increase income taxes on every single one of the 14 million tax-paying working people in the Australian economy, Mr Speaker. And for this total lack of economic credibility over there, Mr Speaker, two people are more to blame than any others. The member for Fairfax, who wanted to borrow hundreds of billions of dollars to build nuclear reactors which would push energy prices up, and of course my old mate, the member for Hume, who went to the election with a policy for higher income taxes, bigger deficits and more debt. Now, the reason those opposite are in a real bind, Mr Speaker, is because half of the party room supports the member for Hume and the other half have met him, Mr Speaker. And the other half have met him, and they know that when it comes to their lack of economic credibility, the member for Hume is part of the problem, not part of the solution, Mr Speaker. And if they flick the switch this week, as they might, Mr Speaker, from the member for Farrer to the member for Hume, that will mean that they have less economic credibility, not more.
Okay, the member for Barker and the member for Gippsland are now on warnings due to their efforts during that last answer. Far too many interjections. I counted at least 7 to 8 on each. So there'll be no more interjections for the remainder of question time from the member for Barker and the member for Gippsland. Now I'd like to hear from the honourable member for Bass.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government working to boost productivity and modernise Australia's economy? And how does that compare with other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, to the member for Bass for her question, but also for the way that she represents her Tasmanian community in our team and in this place. Now, Australia has got lower unemployment and stronger growth than most of the major advanced economies. We've got faster jobs growth and less debt than all of the major advanced economies, and our economy hasn't gone backwards in any quarter under this government like theirs has. But we do know that we've got three big, pressing and persistent challenges, and they are an uptick in inflation, decades of underperforming on productivity, and also this extreme global uncertainty. Now, we know that the best way to deliver higher living standards for more people is to lift the speed limit on the economy so it can grow faster with lower inflation. And that's why economic reform will be a central feature of the budget in May. Now, already we're getting the budget in better shape. We're rolling out tax cuts to help with the cost of living. We're reforming our economy to make it more modern and competitive, and we've taken substantial steps already. The biggest competition policy reforms in 50 years, FIRB reform, payment system reform, abolishing non-compete clauses, federation reform through the Productivity Fund, energy market reforms, reforms to income tax, the PRRT, multinational taxes, and we've abolished nuisance tariffs. Now, even in the few months since the reform roundtable, we've sped up approvals, paused the construction code, legislated better environmental approvals, passed a better regulation bill to cut red tape, progressed hundreds of ideas for better regulation in the finance sector, and we've released a national AI plan, as well as starting another round of tariff and FIRB reform, Mr Speaker. So we've made some progress, but we know that there is more work to do. This is a government which is working together and focused on inflation, productivity and global uncertainty, and that's what the budget will be about, Mr Speaker. Now, those opposite, at a time when we have these pressing and persistent economic challenges, are a complete and utter shambles. They haven't changed a bit since they came after Medicare and pensions in government and still never delivered a surplus in 9 attempts. They haven't learned a thing from an election where they ran on higher income taxes, bigger deficits and more debt to pay for nuclear reactors. Now, as I said a moment ago, Mr Speaker, 2 members were more responsible for that election debacle than anyone, the members for Fairfax and Hume. And that's why flicking the switch from the member for Farrer to the member for Hume will make their lack of economic credibility worse, not better, Mr Speaker. We saw in the election campaign and we've seen in the last few days that the member for Hume is not very good with numbers, Mr Speaker. We've seen that again this week. They are divided, they are divisive, but we are not distracted. We will maintain a focus on inflation, productivity and global uncertainty, and you'll see that in the budget in May.
Call to the honourable member for Capricornia.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. What is the total cost to taxpayers of the Albanese government's expensive and reckless renewables-only energy policy?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. That's a pretty broad question when it comes to renewable energy, and the vast majority of investment in renewable energy will come from the private sector. Mr Speaker, that's the fact. We do have government schemes to support renewable energy, most notably the Capacity Investment Scheme, which is a very successful scheme. The cost is commercial in confidence, Mr Speaker. This opposition to commercial in confidence is a relatively recent phenomenon for those opposite, Mr Speaker, because the House has heard me talk before about the previous minister, the member for Hume's UNGI scheme.
Order. The Minister for Defence Industry will cease. And the Minister for Infrastructure will pause so I can hear from the honourable member for and the member for Hume. Just going to wait. Everyone doesn't need to be interjected on when they just approach the dispatch box. After, that's a different matter. The member for Wannon now has the call.
Thanks, Speaker. The question was very, very specific. It asked about the total cost of your renewables scheme, the total cost, and so commercial in confidence doesn't come into it.
The member for Wannon is correct. It was a very tight question. Obviously, he would like a figure, he would like a number, the person who... I get it. But as we will tell again, under the standing orders, I can't compel the minister. Wish I could, but I can't compel him to do that, right? As every speaker in modern times has dealt with that issue as well. What I will say to the minister is he won't be able to talk about the opposition because he wasn't asked about the opposition. But if he is to give an answer regarding the figures he was asked about and do a compare and contrast, well, that's, of course, allowed, as has always been the case. So the minister, I'm asking to be directly relevant to the question, not specifically about, because he wasn't asked about opposition policy.
Thanks indeed, Mr Speaker. I'm comparing the Capacity Investment Scheme under this government, which replaced the Underwriting New Generation Scheme of the previous government. And I've indicated that the Capacity Investment Scheme is commercial in confidence. The Underwriting New Generation Investment Scheme, masterminded by the member for Hume, when he was asked what are the costs, he said, well, look, these discussions are commercial in confidence, Mr Speaker, said the member for Hume. So it is not unprecedented for government policies and expenditure to be commercial in confidence. Indeed, my shadow minister, the member for Wannon, was responsible for various policies, including the Australian Naval Infrastructure Proprietary Limited supporting shipbuilding infrastructure. When you look at the budget to find out how much that cost, it says the expenditure for this measure is not for publication due to commercial in confidence provisions, Mr Speaker.
I think I understand the point that you've made. You've made that now.
Indeed.
So I'm bringing you back to the question because you'll be defying me if you continue to talk about the opposition.
I think we've made the point, Mr Speaker, that commercial in confidence is not a new thing. Is not a new principle, Mr Speaker. It is one that is well established, and the vast majority of investment in the cheapest form of renewable energy will come from the private sector. That's why we've seen 7.7 gigawatts added to the grid since May 2022, which is equivalent to the demand in the evening of all of the state of Victoria added since 2022 compared to the 4 gigawatts which left the grid under the previous government, and only 1 gigawatt came on.
Okay, we'll hear from the honourable member for Reid.
My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government backing workers in the gig economy? Why was this change necessary, and how does it compare to other approaches?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Oh, thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Reid for that question, and also her long-standing advocacy for Aussie workers right around the country. Now, the Albanese Labor government's world-leading laws lay the foundation for gig workers to achieve for the first time minimum standards. Under our laws, the Fair Work Commission can now consider applications for better minimum pay and conditions for platform drivers like Uber drivers. The Commission is now considering 2 applications to improve the pay and condition of these workers. If these applications are successful, platform food delivery and rideshare drivers will receive life-changing pay increases. Now, drivers will also benefit from better conditions, have stronger rights to representation, dispute resolution and protection if injured. And now Rosalina is just one of these rideshare drivers who will benefit from these minimum standards, and she explained that this is going to make a difference to hundreds of thousands of workers Australia-wide. Now, these changes are part of a suite of reforms introduced by the Albanese Labor government designed to get wages moving for Australians. Now, Speaker, I'm asked if there's any other approaches to this that we've taken. Well, there was another approach, and that was the approach taken by those opposite, who neglected digital platform workers for almost 10 years, despite repeated industry calls for better standards. They left these workers to fall through the cracks of the workplace safety net. Now, I'm sure if these workers could have rated the former government's performance, I have no doubt that the Liberal and National Party would struggle to even get a 1-star review. But not only did the Liberal and Nationals not care about gig workers when they were in government, but let's look at their approach when they were in opposition. When our government took action to provide protections for these workers, those opposite voted against them. And they argued that a lack of minimum standards, low pay and dangerous working conditions were, and I quote, a good model and working well. Well, how out of touch is that? Well, it is clear that those opposite have not learnt their lesson. They continue to be completely out of touch, completely consumed by themselves and divided and obsessed by their internal machinations. Well, those opposite are so completely divided, they are turning on each other. And I doubt that ride-sharing in an Uber is even an option anymore for them. Well, while they are fighting completely amongst themselves.
Ministers,
while
time.
they are fighting completely amongst themselves, our government is...
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Parramatta small business owner Danielle has said, quote, "People are maxed out on their credit cards and they're already skipping meals, sacrificing their own food for their children. Labor's economic mismanagement is fuelling a cost of living crisis. Prime Minister, why do Australians have to skip meals in a cost of living crisis caused by this government's reckless spending?"
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her question, and it goes to a constituent in Parramatta, and I'm sure that there are people in Parramatta, like there are in my electorate, and I'm sure the member for Farrow's electorate, who are under financial pressure. But that's why we're doing something about it. That's right. And those opposite do absolutely nothing except oppose,
the member for Fadden will cease rejecting.
Every single measure. So I hope that when they are engaged in their incessant talking to each other, they actually come up with something, anything will do, which actually is a positive plan. But there's no signs of that, Mr Speaker, because there is actually a lot that the Liberals agree on. They want to increase income taxes for every Australian taxpayer, we know that. They want to undermine renewables as the cheapest form of new energy. And they want to cut the services that Australians rely upon. So I'm not sure when they speak about spending what it is that they oppose. Do they oppose what we did in July, which was to cut student debt by 20%? Well, they said they were against that for 3 million Australians. Do they oppose what we did in August when we legislated to protect penalty rates for weekend and overtime pay? Well, we know they're against that. In September, when we increased social services payments for 5 million Australians, well, we can guarantee that they would have opposed that. We know they oppose what we did in October when we expanded our 5% deposit plan to every first home buyer, which has helped 200,000 Australians get into their first home. We know that in November, when we tripled the bulk billing incentive, that's made a huge difference, and we're on our way to installing more than 200,000 cheaper home batteries, and we know they're against that. And we know that whilst from time to time they speak about one urgent care clinic that they support, apparently, the 100...
Order.
I wish I was that good with the fishing rod, Mr Speaker. I just really wish I was. But we have got 122 of them open. Yeah. We promised 50, delivered 87, and we're delivering another 50, of which we're well on the way. In December, we opened them in Gladstone, the Sunny Coast, Woden, Burwood, Rouse Hill and Marrickville. And Marrickville in particular. And of course, on New Year's Day, they opposed the measures that we did as well, the cheaper medicines and the 1-800 Medicare plan.
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, all they have is complaints, no solutions.
Give a call to the member for Macquarie.
Thank you, Speaker. My question's to the Minister for Health. What's the Albanese Labor government doing to increase the supply of doctors and encourage more doctors to be GPs? How does training more GPs help strengthen Medicare after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing and the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and to the member for Macquarie for her question, but also her relentless advocacy for an urgent care clinic in her community. And I'm delighted she told me the Hawkesbury Urgent Care Clinic opened last week, the 123rd clinic, and is already operating very, very well. I'm not sure you really want it. I'm not sure you really, really want it. You got to want it harder than that. Got to want it harder than that. When we came to government, Mr Speaker, we inherited a position where it had never been harder or more expensive to see a doctor than it was under those opposite. We were utterly determined to turn that around, Mr Speaker. Our Strengthening Medicare agenda has 4 pillars: more bulk billing, more urgent care clinics, cheaper medicines and more doctors, Mr Speaker, and we're delivering on all of them because, as the member for Macquarie said, under the former government, doctors' numbers simply were not keeping pace with a population that was growing, is getting older and experiencing more chronic disease. Well, we've turned that around, Mr Speaker. We've expanded the number of medical school places to train more young Australians as doctors. Cairns now has end-to-end medical training thanks to this government. The Northern Territory has its first ever medical school getting up and running this year, Mr Speaker, and 10 other universities were granted approval by the Minister for Education this year to expand their medical school numbers, with more to come in 2028, Mr Speaker. And we're also cutting red tape and fees for doctors from all around the world who want to come and practice here, particularly in countries where we have high levels of confidence in their training systems, like the UK, Ireland, New Zealand and others. And all of this, Mr Speaker, means we've seen a huge increase in the number of new registrations for medical practitioners, up almost 50% on the position before the COVID pandemic, Mr Speaker. But I have also been clear, as the member for Macquarie said, that I want to see more junior doctors take up training in general practice, the backbone of a well-functioning healthcare system, which is why I was so delighted to join the College of GPs and the College of Rural and Remote Medicine in the electorate of Spence the other day, Mr Speaker, to announce that a record number of junior doctors are starting their training as GPs this year, Mr Speaker. Last year was a record, and this year is another record, Mr Speaker. This year, 2,100 junior doctors are starting their training as GPs or rural generalists, 500 more than the intake under those opposite, Mr Speaker, and half of them are training outside our big cities. More doctors, more bulk billing, more urgent care clinics, cheaper medicines. That's what's delivering a stronger Medicare for all Australians, Mr Speaker.
Give a call to the member for Flynn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How many thousands of wind turbines and how many millions of solar panels are required to be installed to meet the 82% renewable energy targets your government has set through its expensive and reckless renewable energy-only policy?
Give a call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Order.
See if you can work out whether 82 is
The Minister has the call.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for the question. Given the honourable member denies the science of climate change, I'm not sure that he's particularly interested in how we get renewable energy, Mr Speaker, given he doesn't accept the scientific consensus of 99% of scientists across the world. But nevertheless, I make this point. Firstly, we don't have a renewables-only energy policy. We have a policy to get to 82% renewables, which is backed by gas peaking and firming. For the rest of it, Mr Speaker, so 82 is not 100. There is a difference of approach there. Secondly, Mr Speaker, our policy is informed by the experts, as is outlined by the Integrated Systems Plan and GenCost, which we accept. We accept the work of the CSIRO, confronting for the member for Flynn and those opposite. We do actually accept the science and the work of the CSIRO, and the Integrated System Plan outlines the pathway to 82% renewables, and those are decisions made primarily by the private sector and investment to renewable energy, and by households. And by households when they decide to put solar panels on their roof and a cheaper home battery in their garage, as they are doing in very, very big numbers indeed, which we welcome and those opposite have a big problem with.
Give the call to the member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real reform in aged care? Why were these reforms necessary?
Give the call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Corangamite for the question and for being an absolute champion for older people across the Surf Coast and on the Bellarine. Mr Speaker, yesterday marked 100 days since the new Aged Care Act came into effect. And for each and every single one of those days, this government has focused on making our new system work for aged care providers, work for hard-working aged care staff, and most importantly, work for older Australians. From the smallest community support service to acute residential facilities, this Labor government is focused on delivery, not division.
The Minister will pause. The member for Lyne, we're not going to have a continual running commentary during this whole answer. Just going to ask you, for the dignity of the House, to cease interjecting. Otherwise, I won't be able to have you here because it's disrespectful. So the Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As I was saying, from the smallest community support service to acute residential facilities, this Labor government is focused on delivery, not division. Now, we inherited a system in crisis, one that failed older Australians, failed their families and failed the workforce. Rather than deny that reality or talk it down or, and I quote, do the minimum amount they could get away with, like those opposite, this government rolled up our sleeves and got to work fixing it. Mr Speaker, there's always more work to do, but we've made clear progress in getting older Australians the care they need when they need it. I'm pleased to be able to update the House that as at the 31st of December 2025, 346,893 older people had been allocated a support-at-home place. The national priority system stood at 94,963. That's a drop of almost 30,000 people from the previous quarter. Median comprehensive assessment wait times have dropped by 8 days, with the median wait time just 24 days from request to completion of assessments in the July-September quarter. And we're delivering $18 billion in pay rises, because on this side of the House, we value our aged care workers and we believe that they should be paid appropriately. Now, while our government is focused on older Australians, those opposite remain focused on their own internal division. They were a rabble when they were in charge of the system, and they're a rabble now. While we're delivering reform, they're cycling through leaders and rerunning older arguments. And while we're strengthening aged care, they're still debating who's in charge. Older Australians don't need instability. They don't need the division of those opposite. They need a government that is focused, stable and getting on with the job, and that's exactly what this government is doing, delivering for older people every single day.
Give the call to the honourable member for Wentworth.
My question's for the Treasurer. Australians are worried about inflation. There's been a lot of arguing in this House about whose fault it is, but the question I'm being asked is, what is the government actually going to do about it? Australians are scared by the prospect of interest rate hikes. They are scared by their bills going up, and they feel that the cost of living relief doesn't actually get to the heart of the problem. So the question is back to you. What will the government do about it?
Yeah, I'll give the call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, to the honourable member for her question, but also for the constructive way that she goes about engaging with the big challenges in our economy. And inflation, which is higher than anyone would like, is a major challenge in our economy and a major focus of this government. And our plan to deal with this tick-up in inflation is to help people with the cost of living in the most responsible way that we can, primarily through the tax system, but in other ways as well that other ministers have spoken about today. To continue to get the budget in better condition. We've made some progress there, but we know that there's more work to do. But also over the medium term and the longer term to lift the speed limit on the economy so that it can grow more quickly without adding to these pressures on inflation. And so on this side of the House we do acknowledge, we do understand that this inflation is putting extra pressure on people in the community you represent, the communities that we all represent as well. But more than acknowledging that, we are acting on it as well. Now, there will always be a range of views about the best way to go about addressing this challenge, but I think the three ways that the government is going about it strikes the best balance, the most responsible way that we can. This inflation is higher than anyone would like. The interest rate decision which accompanied it puts extra pressure on millions of people with a mortgage as well. We take our responsibilities to every Australian seriously, and we know that right now, when they're under pressure, we need to do more than acknowledge that and act on it, and that's what we're doing.
Give the call to the member for Leichhardt.
My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to combat illegal foreign fishing in the Torres Strait?
Oh, good question. Give the call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Speaker. And I thank the member for Leichhardt and acknowledge his strong advocacy to combat illegal foreign fishing north of Australia, in the northern waters of Australia. Illegal foreign fishing is not only an attack and damage to our environment, it is not only an attack and damage to commercial fishing and recreational fishing interests in Australia, it's a straight-out attack on our sovereignty. These waters belong to Australia. That's why, in 2023, following increased illegal fishing attempts northwest of the Kimberley, the government announced Operation Leadstrom in December of that year. Now, what we did in Operation Leadstrom was we brought together a number of government agencies, including the Australian Fisheries Management Authority, AFMA, managed by the Minister for the Environment, as well as Australian Border Force. Bringing all of those agencies together meant that since that point there was 103 interceptions, 35 boats destroyed, more than 8 tonne of catch seized. Prior to Leadstrom, there had never been a joint task force of this nature. That success, though, saw a response from illegal foreign fishers. So, having discovered that the northwest was now being blocked to them, they decided to try further east. And the MPs here from the Northern Territory then saw attempts in our waters there because of our success in the northwest. As a result of that, we launched Operation Luna. Operation Luna in the waters of the Northern Territory saw us then have 97 interceptions, 44 boats destroyed, more than 20 tonne of catch seized. The success in Leadstrom and Luna means that there are now attempts going further east to the Torres Strait, and I acknowledge the really strong advocacy of the member for Leichhardt in making sure that we have led to the announcement that was made earlier today by Commissioner Gav Reynolds of the Australian Border Force to announce Operation Broadstaff to combat illegal foreign fishing in Queensland and the Torres Strait. It's led by Border Force under the leadership of Commissioner Reynolds. Since we came to government, border protection funding has been increased by $600 million. Surveillance flights are now 26% higher than they were in 22-23. The criminals have tried and failed in the Kimberley. They tried and failed in the Northern Territory. They are now trying in the Torres Strait, and they will fail. The message to foreign fishers who want to operate illegally in our waters is simple. The waters you are on belong to Australia, not to you. You risk losing your haul, your equipment, your vessel and your freedom.
Give the call to the honourable member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. A senior member of the Prime Minister's Cabinet, the Minister for Social Services and member for Sydney, today refused to specifically condemn Grace Tame's conduct at a Sydney rally, where Tame chanted a vile anti-Semitic slur. Will the Prime Minister today show leadership, disassociate himself from these words and unequivocally condemn this disgusting display of anti-Semitism by the former Australian of the Year?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for her question. I'll make 2 comments. One is I'll refer to my previous answer. And the second is
on my left.
And the second is we need to not continually look for political opportunities from what is a devastating situation.
Order.
We need to turn the temperature down.
Order. Give the call. Order when the House comes to order. We'll hear from the member for Patterson.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to improve local roads and infrastructure?
Order, no, we're not doing this. I need to hear the question. This continual from across the chamber. I'm reaching my limit in terms of... I said across the chamber. Okay? So I need to hear the question. All members need to be hearing the question. So I'm just going to ask the member for Patterson, as I did the member for Ryan, to begin her question again. She may have the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to improve local roads and infrastructure in regional communities? How does this compare with other approaches, and why is it so important to support local government?
I'll give the call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I ask the other side to listen up, because you're about to get schooled in how we deal with regional communities. But thank you to the member for Patterson.
Order.
I really appreciate the question.
Order. The Minister... Minister can... Order. Order. Members on my right. The Minister's just going to cool it for a moment. I want to hear from the Manager of Opposition on point of order. The minister is 15 seconds in, but I'll listen to him.
Yes, well, even 15 seconds in, the minister knows she's not allowed to use the term you, and that's very inflammatory. And the Prime Minister has just said to dial down the rhetoric, and the minister wasn't listening to the Prime Minister about dialling it down.
Well, it's inflammatory because it's directed to me. Member for Holt is warned. The manager is correct. It's disrespectful to the Speaker. So I'm going to ask the minister to also understand the standing orders and to direct her remarks through the chair.
Thank you, Mr.
And the minister
Speaker.
may proceed.
And can I thank the member for Paterson for the question. She knows how important it is to deliver for regional communities, and while we're at it, for future generations, and congratulations on becoming grandparent for the first time. Since coming to government, we have committed $4.4 billion over 5 years to the Roads to Recovery program. That's a $1.8 billion increase on the previous 5-year period. It's funding that goes directly to every single council to spend money on the roads they want to, the way their community wants to. And why is that important? Because those opposite froze funding in that space. For Port Stephens Council, what that means on the ground is an extra $2.9 million that they are receiving under the Albanese government than what they would have received under those opposite. Our Growing Regions program is delivering $600 million to important projects across the country, including $8.5 million for the Eastwood Leisure Complex redevelopment in the member for Ballarat's electorate, $9.5 million for the Roma Pool revitalisation in the member for Maranoa's electorate. We have substantially increased road black spot funding to $150 million a year. It's going to 102 rural, regional and remote programs across the country. $1.2 million for traffic lights in the electorate of Braddon in Sprayton, $1 million for safety improvements in Caboolture in the electorate of Longman. And we've also launched a new $200 million program called Safer Local Roads and Infrastructure Program. And we recently announced Tranche 3 of this program, Mr Speaker. The Shire of Wyndham, East Kimberley and Durack will receive nearly $4 million towards Mulligan's Lagoon Road and Weaver Plain Road intersection to accommodate heavy vehicle traffic. And the Mareeba Shire Council in Kennedy will receive $3.1 million to support agricultural productivity. More than $77 million earmarked for projects in regional Australia in this tranche of funding. And while we're at it, we have restored highway maintenance funding, which was frozen by the previous coalition government. That's right, they froze funding, and in contrast, not only did we restore it, but we increased it from $350 million to $460 million. Under those opposite, roads were going backwards, just like they're polling, but I guess that's what happens when you are focused on yourselves rather than delivering for regional Australia. Because on this side of the House, there's a growing number of regional members because regional Australians know we get things done.
The call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I ask for the question to be placed on the notice paper.